Hello, and welcome to another edition of Maximum Growth Live. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, CEO of FirmFlex, the social media marketing company for lawyers, as well as managing partner of Ruane Attorneys, but not for long, and a civil rights and criminal defense firm here in Connecticut. And with me, as always, is my Seth Price down in Delta. He is managing partner of Price Benowitz, your DC, Maryland, Virginia, probably soon Georgia, Florida, go the whole coast. And actually, that's something I want to talk about. As well as Blue Shark Digital, the founder and president, I assume, of Blue Shark Digital. The
CEO. Bretton's the president.
CEO, gotcha. And he does SEO for law firms all across the country. And today is a Tuesday show. And what we want to do on Tuesdays is just talk generally about stuff that's going on that's impacting us, because a lot of stuff that changes almost week to week, especially with everything that we've gone through over the last year. And so there's a couple things that I want to talk to you guys about this week. And Seth and I have come up with a couple of topics that I think are going to be interesting. But the first thing off the jump, I think that's important for people to talk about, if you have a small firm and you are in growth mode, you may have needed to get PPP money in the first round or even the second round. And if you haven't gotten your PPP money yet, they're actually going to be taking PPP offline for businesses over 20 employees. So if you are truly a small firm and haven't gotten your PPP yet, the next 2 weeks are going to be prime time, because banks are going to be looking for firms like yours to be able to get you those loan dollars that you could use to grow your firm and keep you going. Because quite frankly, for me, our revenue dropped, but by having the PPP money come in, we could take the money that we did have still coming in and repurpose that for growth initiatives. And one of the things that we're doing is we're actually hiring a new employee to be our happiness coordinator, and she starts on Monday. And that's money I wouldn't have had for her if not for PPP. Seth, how's your week going?
It's going good. I had a cool brunch over the weekend with Paul Faust, and he's a force of nature. He's known well for the phone number game, but it was just sort of great to hear perspective on somebody else who's, networked very well into the legal market, as well as somebody who's recently made the move from New York to Florida. So it was definitely an interesting experience.
For our viewers out there who are fans of The Office, Paul Faust is Cool Guy Paul from, I think it was season 4, episode like 11 or 12, somewhere in there. And it deals with the episode. I don't know. I'll just get into it. It's the episode where they were doing construction in the building, and the construction workers were taking over the parking lot, and everyone had to walk from the satellite parking lot, and they called together the 5 families of the building. And Cool Guy Paul Faust is one of those guys of Disaster Kits Unlimited. I think that was his brand back then. But it's a great episode when you're watching it on Netflix or now on Peacock with your wife, and you're like, hey, I know that guy. That's Cool Guy Paul. So you got to hang out with Cool Guy Paul, which is cool.
And to be on one of the most iconic TV shows of all time as you is kind of as Paul is pretty cool. Yeah. So it's definitely entertaining brunch.
I wonder if he gets a residual for that. I wonder if he gets a check, as
Paul's a regular watcher. Maybe he'll put it in the comments and let us know.
Yeah,
he's making
that'd be pretty cool to get a check for your appearance on The Office. It's just super cool. It's just super cool. Hey, he's Cool Guy Paul. What can I say? So, one of the things that's come up for me, and I want to talk to you a little bit about it right now, is planning out the rest of the year. The guys at Maximum Lawyer announced MaxLawCon, and I know for me that's sort of like a can't miss seminar every year. I was sad to miss it during last year, but it's coming up in October. I think October 11th to the 13th. They'll do a pre-day for the guild. And what are some of your best memories or takeaways for the people who are in our audience who haven't been to a MaxLawCon? Tell me some of the takeaways that you've had over the last couple of years.
What I loved, the first one was particularly special because it was sort of like this coming together of a bunch of us geeks who sort of each had our own world, and that they were like people that you sort of knew from online but hadn't spent a lot of time with in person. So the was sort of this like, hey, this is coming together as a real thing by the real conference. had left an academic building and was a place where like-minded business marketing focused lawyers could all come together, share best practices, and get to finally connect. I was on Bernard's weekly podcast the other day. This is a guy that I only knew online. But for MaxLawCon, would never have gotten to see in person. So it brings all these cool people together under one roof to learn and share together.
Yeah, like one of the things that's really awesome about doing what we do, you and I get to do, and really just generally about being an entrepreneurial lawyer or an entrepreneur at all, is that it's an incredibly lonely journey. In that those hours that you spend building systems, even if you get like me and you become a nerd about it and you like doing it, the reading, how to market your business, how to set yourself up for, the best way to run this type of practice or that type. It's not the 9 to 5 that gets you loneliness. It's that 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. when you're constantly thinking about your business. So it's the 5 to 9 that's a grind. But in order to grow, you have to invest that time. Like they say, that 10,000 hours. And one of the great things about something like MaxLawCon is that there are other people that are in that grind as well. So it's a unique opportunity to meet with people who actually are going through the same things that you're going through. And just the resources that you get and ideas that you get, I think, are really sort of really insane. I mean, the value add you get. The only real negative is how they cut their bagels.
I couldn't agree more. The bagel cutting is disturbing, but and there's some sock wearing with sandals that again, but overall, other than those few detriments, it's really been a great experience. And the fact that it was built organic, is something that it just. And again, this is something you and I have talked a lot about, in that there are different ways to do things. There are masterminds that people join, they pay for, that you put together with your buddies that might be free. And I feel that when stuff is done and it's completely free, it generally loses a certain element of sort of, there's not somebody there to push it along. Very often it doesn't continue or survive over the years. And if it is something that's done by a marketer that has a fee that's so high, it can break down at the other end. That what they've done is sort of a neat intermediate world where it's coming together, but done and orchestrated, where they've taken their own advice and had somebody do the back end work to make sure that it actually comes together and goes on as expected. And what was cool was to watch it. It wasn't perfect. We talked about it in our last episode, and just like our first few episodes, as you're hearing right now, there's a lot of stuff that isn't perfect. But there was, what the saying about what is the, the idea is you got to try stuff, and it's not going to be perfect. Our first few episodes were rough. I don't know if they're ever going to be back in syndication here, but we got it going, and if you get it going, it'll happen. And you know what? Right now it's a Monday, and all of a sudden they're having let's leave this in. This is one of those things that's going to happen from time to time in the background, and that to me that's sort of what I've loved about MaxLawCon is. They tried it, and you got to watch it in progress, becoming a real sustaining entity that's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, this is the life that we live when we're living at home during coronavirus. You have a kid outside your door, and it's just the nature of what we have to do. But the one thing that's interesting about MaxLawCon and is that we've had a number of coaches. So we've had people on recently. The Vista groups. We've had the How to Manage groups. We've had the Atticus people. And one of the cool things about MaxLawCon is that it's almost like they don't care what language you speak, in that people come to the entrepreneurial method, running a law firm, through many different ways. Like myself, I'm kind of homegrown, right? I'm that organic weed growing in the middle of the highway where things are going on left and right, but I found a way to sort of grow up in the middle of the freeway, whereas others got on the on ramp and went the right way. And the great thing about Max Law community is that they don't look down on you ever you got here. If you're an Atticus or how to manage person, it's come on, let's do this. We all grow together, and I think that's one of the awesome things about this seminar is that you could actually get feedback from people who have different backgrounds and experience and get that input. I mean, I can remember being at a dinner with people who are like, I like Atticus, I like how to manage, and I was like, I haven't done any of that stuff. And so we're all talking about best practices, and the themes tend to be the same, but the methodology of getting there tends to be a little bit different. And so you can pick and choose the things that you love and go that way. Because, like we've said, you do what you love, and if it's a step by step that you hate, you're just not going to do it. So creating your own method is a great way to do it, and you can do that very quickly by amping it up at a thing like MaxLawCon.
Hey Jay, I want to pivot for a moment because yes, agreed, can't wait for Max Law, but I got a substantive question that's been sort of struggling with, which is, as COVID has dragged on, I have had a really hard time with some of the management that's required. I'm sitting here in Florida, but even if I was home, people are not generally in the office, in the main DC office, and I feel that some of the ability to manage and tweaking or changing management style to work within this environment. I want to get your thoughts. You start building systems than you, but there's a certain sort of piece where, okay, you built those systems, but then somebody's going to report data to you. Are you fully a 0 and 1 type of management style where people are sending you reports? Or are you having regular calls or Zooms with your team? And if so, how have you adapted during this time? Because I'm starting to see the things that I have done, that some of that fatigue has left people maybe less precise or not as sharp as I think they would have been in an in-person meeting. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. It's going to be a long-winded answer. So what I want to do is I want to take a quick break. We'll hear from our sponsors, and when we get back, we're going to talk about how my management style has changed during COVID. I'm going to ask you some questions about what you've done, and after we hear from our sponsors, we'll be right back to answer that question.
In this world today, if you want to grow your business, you want to grow your firm, you want to take on more cases and make a bigger impact, you have to have a digital blueprint. Statistically, throughout the time that we've been working with Blue Shark Digital, our law firm, the Atlanta Divorce Law Group, grew over 1,400%. They truly understand where we're headed and how we want to get there. I have a team in Blue Shark Digital that I feel like has my back.
Hi, I'm Jay Ruane, one of the founders of FirmFlex and a practicing attorney for over 20 years. Anyone who knows me knows how my firm runs on the systems we create, and it has allowed us to flourish, even in tough times. I spent years and hundreds of thousands of dollars until I finally figured out a way to engage my audience and drive top-of-mind awareness with social media. And what did I do once I figured it all out? I built a system for it, and now you can put that system to work for you. You see, we took the hard part, creating the content and finding the images, and made it foolproof. Every day you will have curated social media topics to post designed to make your firm constantly remind your audience about your firm, what you do, and how you can help. And the best part? You don't even need to hire a dedicated social media person to do this for you. In fact, you don't even need to hire anyone new. We designed the system to make it easy for you to delegate to your receptionist, assistant, or paralegal and have them execute solid social media for you in just 5 minutes a day. It's like having a content writer, researcher, and graphics designer at a fraction of the price it would cost to hire in-house. Sign up today for the Social Super System and start building your brand where your clients already are, on social media. All right, and we're back now, and let's talk about how management has changed over the last year. And it's something that I sort of teased at the beginning of the episode that I'm currently the managing partner of my law firm, but I really want to get out of that role in that I have a number of direct reports to me. And for example, for my sales people, my intake and marketing teams that are together, I'm actively talking to them every day. We have our own Slack group that is constantly firing for both. We have a Slack for marketing and we have a Slack for intake, and they're separate installs, right? They're their own installs because we have different channels for those types of things. And so I'm part of that process probably more than I should be because I'm not really necessary. I'm really sort of the attaboy, attagirl person. I put up funny comments and some GIFs and that sort of thing on both of those as they start to execute. Marketing, I'm more of an idea guy, so I have a channel where I just dump ideas constantly. And then we go back to those when we have our weekly meeting and talk about some of the things that I think we should prioritize. We've talked on prior subjects, prior episodes. I have a quarantine where I put something into quarantine. I revisit it after 45 days to make sure that it's something that I truly feel good about. But when it comes to the legal operations and the administrative operations, it's really been challenging. We, like a lot of people, started to schedule weekly meetings by Zoom. I thought it was important for us to see each other's faces throughout the whole process. Some of my departments didn't do as well, and we found some slippage in those departments where they weren't having those weekly meetings. And I'd really to the point where those things are being scheduled and run regularly, not by me, but by the leader of the departments. And so I could come and go. But I really think that when you're not in each other's presence, you need to be more constructive about staying in tune because people have a tendency to sort of go down rabbit holes on work. And I have one partner who, if I didn't talk, I could go 3 years without talking to him. I know all his work would get done. And he would love it to be left alone to just work his files and not think of anything else. But that's not conducive to where are we going to be with your practice in 3 years. So I need to have that dialogue. Let's talk your thoughts.
Yeah, so this is what I've seen twice in two different scenes across two different companies where you have your regular meetings and the meeting concludes and then you discover, oh, there were topics that were really important to be brought up at that meeting that are not being brought up. And yet you're filling your time with, I don't want to say nonsense because that's too strong, but with B and C issues and leaving an A issue, aside, whether it be prioritization or whether it be an obstacle that somebody can't get through. And I'm sitting here scratching my head and trying to figure out how to make the interpersonal time the most effective. Because you're there, we have our scheduled meetings, we're doing those things, and yet I'm sitting there disappointed multiple times where I find out that the lead is being buried or not discussed at all, and that yet we're still having our meetings. The sort of mindset shift for employees that this is the opportunity. Let's start with A issues to B to C, but that and again, I don't know if you've seen something similar or again, it comes in waves, but I'm trying to figure out how to make sure that the in-person time together doesn't miss those things. On here, we might say to somebody during an interview, what do you wish you knew? Or what are some of the mistakes you made along the way? I almost feel like I have to start turning these meetings into, okay, what is your biggest obstacle for the week? And almost, setting a formulaic questioning to make sure that you don't miss the elephant in the room.
Okay, so one of the things that I do, and I've been doing it for a number of years now, is I actually have a form email that gets sent out to everybody every Tuesday or Thursday. I've got a couple going, but this one is based on a product called 15.5, and it's
I didn't know you were using it. We launched it at Blue Shark. And it turns out one of the executives there is a college classmate who was organizing my reunion until it just got canceled.
Okay, well, there you go. So I love the idea of 15.5. I read about it in Entrepreneur or Inc. magazine probably a decade ago. And I immediately, I signed up, I tried it out. And what I found was I actually had different questions for my lawyers than that I wanted answered and different questions for my staff, etc. So I actually took the idea, spun it out cheaper, of course, because I'm SOB. Instead of using the 15.5 product, I actually just created it myself with a recurring email and a link to a Google form. So I have that stuff coming in weekly, and it allows me to address issues. I'll tell you, one of the things that came up was on my weekly calls with higher level paralegal staff is we were asking, I was trying to talk to them about how's it going with training the VAs, and I was getting, oh, it's going fine, we're working hard, blah, blah, blah. But then the next week in the email, I was getting, I don't think she's going to make it. I don't think he's going to make it. They don't seem to be getting it. So they were afraid to tell me to my face, but they had no problem putting it in. Go ahead.
Well, two different things, right? So part of it's that, part of it may be afraid to your face, but part of it may be that it's you like there's an afraid, and there's also, well, the data points that add up to that don't get asked in the meeting, versus in that form you're asking in-depth questions, and that's sort of what I'm talking about. You're missing the elephant in the room, and look, it may be they're scared of you. I don't buy that, in the sense that, again, there totally happens, but there are also times when they're like filling all this other stuff versus, hey, the real question is what's going on with this. So the question is, did you have to say obstacles, because that presumably would have come up, versus like, how can we, yes, it's great you have that form, but how can we run a meeting so that we don't need the form? Not that you shouldn't have the form, but I'd like to be able to think that the elephant in the room should be presentable in that forum, unless you're talking about nuts and bolts and never get to that in your meeting.
Well, I think part of the problem is most meetings devolve to nuts and bolts. Number one, I think if you look, there's plenty of research about the dynamics of interpersonal communication. Take the classroom metaphor, right? Think you're the teacher, all your employees are the classroom. There are people who are just uncomfortable raising their hand. Now, you and I are not like that, right? You and I are not like that, and as a result, we have a tendency to think the world thinks along our ways. And it looks like we got some more camera troubles for Seth. Let me see if I can take a quick break and fix this. Folks, we'll be right back with more Maximum Growth Live. Okay, folks, we're back, and we're just wrapping up this conversation about management. I think, Seth, one of the challenges we have is you and I have a world view, right? And this is something that I was talking about with some of my employees the other day about when you pick a jury. You have to overcome that worldview of the people sitting in the box, same as the people sitting in your staff positions or even in your lawyer positions. Okay, so obviously, folks, we're having some technical difficulties today, but what I'm going to do is down in the comments, I'm going to actually share with you the questions that I ask my team every week in our weekly email. Seth, he was there. I don't know, Seth, can you hear me at least?
I can hear you.
Okay, so we just you look like a Picasso, a really
late. I'm in witness protection. This is something that nobody can identify me. I can talk about the mob now.
All right, so my thought is basically, with the management of people, you have to recognize that not everybody is comfortable getting up in front of a stage and talking to 500 lawyers like you and I are. And similarly, some staff may not see the A problems because they live in the weeds, right? And the types of things that as a law firm owner and someone who's focused on growth, you have to be able to sort of take a step back. And that's one of the great things about separating yourself from the day-to-day is that you can start to identify some of those areas where the growth problems are and the ability to scale your firm are. What are your thoughts on that, Seth?
I couldn't agree more. It's kind of an issue that I've gone back and forth on a lot. And I don't want, I just wish I could wave a magic wand and have somebody bring the ultimate issues to the table rather than extract them. The fact that we're using software to discover that essential of an issue is what I intuitively have a very hard time wrapping around, but it is so that we have to deal with it. But we empower everybody. Raise your hand, ask questions. Those are our sort of core business asks when somebody is there. Escalate and raise your hand. That's all we need, because everything else falls into place, and yet it's easier said than done.
Yeah, it is a challenging situation to try to ever get someone to escalate. I mean, I've had employees with major beefs with other employees over cases that they've been working on together, and yet neither one of them will say, hey, I got a problem. Can we figure out a way to solve it? And I could come in once the problem is identified, and I could literally solve it in 5 minutes because I've dealt with this issue before. But people are loath to sort of involve you in your business when they see you as the boss, and that's a challenge. It's a challenge for all of us as we grow our firm. But Seth, I want to thank you for.
I'll conclude with one positive, right? I'll
Okay.
wrap up, even though I look ridiculous as a positive, which is the only good thing about COVID. Our intake team, which is a team of up to 12 millennials, for the first time ever has a low drama quotient. So while it is awful, we're talking about the downsides of not being in the office and talking to each other, the lack of drama has been awesome.
Well, maybe your intake team should stay remote, even at the back end. I mean, it sounds to me like they function better.
It's pick your poison, right? There's a certain amount that I know is not as good, but we had some real issues with drama going back a few quarters, and the idea that that's not there. But I also feel that over time it's going to allow people to hide, that we're going to hit a breaking point where certain things great, but there will be costs, and we'll have a show about what those costs are. We don't even know what they are yet.
Well, and it's one of the challenges, you and I have talked about, how do you get that team feeling when you're not together? I think I remember being in one of your rooms once where you had a monitor up with video camera, like the webcams up, so people could see other people at their desk. And that was actually a challenge for me early on in COVID, in that my people, they just presumed, well, if somebody didn't pick up the phone, they were blowing off work. It wasn't that they were doing other work. And so it was like, well, how come they're not answering the phone? Well, because they're doing something. Not because they're sitting there watching, Oprah Winfrey's latest interview show. They were actually doing other work. You just didn't know that they were doing other work because they're not sitting next to you. And that, it was a small minds thing, I think, when they just presume that they're the only one working. But it was an issue that we had to find a way to resolve.
And with that, we've just aged ourselves by using an Oprah Winfrey daytime reference. So I think that's probably a good cue that we're done for today.
All right, maybe I should go back in and cut it and say Ellen DeGeneres or Kelly Clarkson or something. But folks, with that, we're going to end this show with Maximum Growth Live. I am Jay Ruane, and he is the grandson of Pablo Picasso. I said, I don't want to tell you that I'm having flashbacks to being a 13-year-old boy and having cable TV, having HBO scrambled and trying to see something on like the Fast Times at Ridgemont High or Porky's, trying to get it. What is that? Is that something? Is that something dirty that I? But I do. I think I see your shirt and maybe your hat, but I don't know, folks. I'd like to think that Seth Price. Yeah, there you go. So thank you all so much for being with us. We'll see you again. Remember, Thursday, 3 p.m. Catch us syndicated on Maximum Lawyer Media anytime you wish. You can put these videos out on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Maximum Growth Live. For now, I am Jay Ruane. He was Seth Price, and we will see you on Thursday. Have a great one. Bye for now.